Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, viewers. I'm Matthias Aufiko, news editor of Namibian Sun newspaper. Welcome to another edition of Evening Review. It's another exciting edition, but before we kick off, let's have a look at today's headlines. Well, as promised earlier on, it's another exciting edition. We're joined in studio tonight by Dr. Alfredo Hengari, the presidential spokesperson. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
Yes, it's good to have you here. It's been a while, huh?
Yeah, it has been a while. I was here in 2019.
Yeah.
And I had a very interesting conversation with Twib
at
the time.
Well, I'm seeing another interesting conversation today. Let's get right into the mix of things. Last week, SONA in Parliament, we saw the statement that your office issued also. Can you just take us through that?
Yeah, the SONA, the State of the Nation address, is a highly solemn occasion, which is a constitutional requirement. The head of state is obliged to address Parliament, and but most importantly, Namibians.
Yeah.
That element is often underplayed, but it's a State of the Nation address. The President is speaking to the nation through that very important body of our governance architecture, which is Parliament. And what happened last week is quite regrettable because the behavior of some of the members did not reflect that solemn nature of that occasion.
Yeah, but some of those members are saying that the behavior was triggered by the manner in which the president was responding to the questions that were asked on the floor.
I think you, as a human being, as a journalist, I think as a citizen, most importantly, you have certain expectations when it comes to the behavior of members of Parliament who carry the title of honorable. And the President always says we can disagree without being disagreeable. And that says it all. Yeah. There's no excuse for what had transpired. I think it's not the type of Parliament that we would like to see, especially in a country that has been peaceful, stable for the past 31 years. Disorder, in whatever form, is something that you, as journalists, ought to condemn.
Yeah, we've seen over the years the manner in which the debates and the discussions in Parliament were rather succinct and very chilled over the years. Is it because of the new robust manner in which the parties, especially the opposition parties, want to tackle things? Is this why we are having this type of collision? Do you think that's partly why?
I think we can have debates that are robust without trading personal insults, without becoming agitated. because it's not the level of your voice that determines the quality of the debate. It's not, you know, your level of agitation and anger. It's not that element that determines the quality of a discussion.
Yeah.
Robust means ideas that are put to the table, that are challenging, that raising issues without fear or favor, but in a manner that is always respectful of the institutions of the Republic. And the presidency or the president is the ultimate expression of the sovereign will of Namibians.
Yeah.
Our president is elected by Namibians, and he becomes the embodiment of the best of who we are as Namibians. So the necessary respect, the necessary courtesies must be extended at all times.
Yeah.
A debate, the President Gengop is someone who would welcome on any day, any given point in time, a robust debate. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
But I think it's something that even you as journalists, I think it's something that ought to be of concern, that such behavior occurs in that august house.
Well, in terms of accountability, that's why SONA is also there to a certain extent, for the legislature to hold the executive to account. A number of questions went unanswered last week because the session was suspended after what happened. As the presidency, do you feel, is there any need to respond to those questions on another platform?
There are many platforms through which the president accounts. The president maintains an open door policy when it comes to the media, when it comes to ordinary citizens. When things are taken to the presidency, we do our utmost best to respond to queries, including you as journalists. And that's why you continue to inundate us as the presidency with questions that are at times very sectoral, but you feel that when you go to the presidency, you are likely to get the responses that you seek. Now, it's important to understand our political system as well. Our political system is hybrid. It's presidential, but also parliamentary. In some instances, in some systems, they will call them semi-presidential systems. Now, the leader of government business in parliament is the prime minister. Yesterday, questions were posed to the prime minister. They were posed to the minister in the presidency. These are forms of accountability. So if a question is posed, and because the president can get 20 questions, he's not obliged to answer 20 questions.
What do you mean he's not obliged to?
He can provide a summary of the questions and answer them in a manner that is summarized. Because even when you look at the president is obliged to answer a few questions. The president will take a few questions following the SONA. So we cannot be pedantic about it. That no, he didn't answer that element of my questions or in a manner in which you want it to be answered.
Dr. Hengari, you make it sound like the president answering questions after his address is a favor being done.
No, nobody's saying that. I'm saying the president spent time,
yes,
basically over an hour, answering questions from parliament, from the opposition benches. And that's a form of accountability. In fact, the SONA itself, the address of the president is a form of accountability.
Yes.
So it does not only become accountability when leaders or when the opposition benches are asking questions or when journalists are asking questions.
Yeah.
At all times, President Gengop has led a government that is accountable, that is transparent, and that is inclusive. So when leaders of the opposition, when they request to see the president on issues of national concern, they've always received an audience on the part of the president. Always. And I can share with you now, in record time.
Yes.
In record time. That's the standard operating procedure of the president. They request an audience, they get the platform. And I think it's also important for all of us to emphasize, as Namibians, as citizens, that there's a need to have discussions and debates that are respectful. It's the type of orderly society that we should promote.
Yeah. When you say the open door policy, and the president touched on it last week, the issue of Honorable Venani, the leader of the official opposition, who's been, this past years, been publicly and on record saying that he's been requesting for an audience with the president, but he's not been getting any. So well, which open door are you talking about?
I think Honorable Venani has the tendency of making public pronouncements and then implying that he has requested an audience with the president. But I can assure you, we don't have the record of Honorable Venani requesting an audience with the president.
So he's lying.
And I think we should also make a distinction here. And I've said it. President Geingob has met with leaders of opposition parties. Nudo has been to State House. Nudo, UDF, and there's also a third party. They've all been to State House to meet with the president.
But in the bigger scheme of things, Dr. Hengari, when you speak of political parties engaging the president, your biggest parties are not on the list you mentioned. No.
And I can also reassure you that when Honorable Venani had addressed correspondence to the president has always responded to that correspondence.
Yeah.
Once again in record time. For example, on the question of the benefits of Honorable Venani as leader of the official opposition, Venani has written to the president around such matters, and they've always been responded to. And once again, I can inform you that in record time, because that's the method of President Geingob. If Honorable Venani requests to see President Geingob as leader of the opposition, I can assure you that the inclusive leader that President Geingob is, Honorable Venani will be accorded an audience.
Okay. Let's move on to...
Venani is invited to events of the president.
Well, those are ceremonial events.
But I think, all I'm saying is if Venani wants to see President Geingob, he should put it in writing.
Okay.
And as he usually does, he can also put it on social media.
Let's move on to press freedom. 3rd May is coming up. The rankings were recently released. We're still #1 in Africa, but we dropped slightly on a global scale. What's your take?
I think you ought to congratulate yourself for having retained the #1 position. You ought to be proud of Namibia being a beacon of press freedom in Africa. And it speaks to the commitment of the president in that regard. I think it was in 2017 or so, May 2017, where President Geingob reaffirmed his commitment to press freedom, and he said, for as long as I'm president, press freedom in this country will be guaranteed. And we live by that credo. of a presidency that believes strongly in press freedom, because press freedom is one of the important elements in the sustenance of our democracy. Of course, you have democratic elections, you have a government that is open, transparent, but press freedom is an essential element. But I also need to add a press that reports factually and truthfully. Unfortunately, these days there's a conflation of personal opinions and facts. And that is not healthy for a democracy, because citizens must make up their minds on the basis of facts presented to them by a highly professional press corps that lives by the code of ethics. Unfortunately, in a number of instances, that code of ethics is ignored.
Yeah.
And the drop that you're talking about on a global scale, we were 23rd last year, and we are at number 24 this year. But I think the most essential element that we must retain is that we remain a country that is a leader in press freedom on the African continent. That is the power of our example. It means that your freedoms as journalists are guaranteed. There are no threats. You are not in jail. You write as you please, as you want. But I think there's something that you must accept as well as journalists and as a press. The importance of contradiction. I think I'm worried about the fact that journalists in some instances have become quite self-righteous, and they don't accept contradictions. They don't accept us on this side saying, no, but what you said there is wrong, it's not factual. They don't want to accept that.
Yeah. But
So because they don't want to accept that, they start to write letters to the International Committee for the Protection of Journalists. Apparently they are being verbally attacked by the spokesperson of the president. But these things have no basis. You have a media ombudsman in this country.
Yeah.
That you are a self-regulating sector, and you yourselves have agreed to have the media ombudsman.
Yeah.
But you didn't go to him to say, no, but Hengari or the spokesperson of the president said A, B, C, D, E, which we find to be an attack on the independence of the press. There's nothing like that. You wrote a letter to someone in Paris, yet you have your own institutions. You could have tested them, but that didn't happen. So it's quite regrettable. There are certain things that are of concern. And I think for us to improve as a country when it comes to the rankings, it ought to be a collective effort.
Well, you've made an application with the media ombudsman last year.
Yeah.
Where did that end?
Well, I think
You spoke of how important it is to tolerate contradictions. So where did that end?
It was not last year. Actually. It was 2019.
Was it 2019?
Yeah. We made that submission in 2019, I think, if I'm not mistaken, but not last year. Well, we opted to withdraw, and partly because I have to be brutally honest, some of the pronouncements on the part of the media ombudsman have not been encouraging. Elements of bias in terms of the analysis of the press freedom space. You want someone who is an ombudsman in the true sense of the word, and not always seeking to please one side or the other.
So then, wasn't this a chance for you then to test the institution you're speaking of?
But I think if you journalists don't even have confidence in your own creation, you go to the International Committee for the Protection of Journalists in Paris to complain about how you were treated.
But the media
allegedly treated.
The media ombudsman is for aggrieved parties to report against the media, right?
Yeah, no,
you
but
do know
you.
that. You
But
do know that, yeah.
But also you. Also you.
So now, in terms of the institution, as you were saying, the media has an institution
But
where you are
also
self-regulating.
It's for all of us.
Yeah.
It's
So
for
you
all of
feel
us.
it's not serving any purpose?
No, that's not what I'm saying. But
You're
I'm just
saying they're biased.
But I'm just saying,
Yeah.
if you journalists don't have confidence in the media ombudsman, to deal with certain issues, you'd rather go to someone sitting in Paris to complain, and you ignore your own institutions, then I think there's a need to have a serious conversation about some of these institutions and their efficacy.
Yeah. The recent report, you've been cited in the report, your remarks, what do you make of that?
No, but I think that's why I'm saying that it's unfortunate that it's Namibian journalists who say bad things about themselves. It's quite unfortunate because, and the regrettable part is that they can't point to any particular incident. It's just, a blanket statement like that. We have to engage in a manner that is robust. In as much as you feel that the honorable members in parliament are apparently engaging in robust debates, you also have to accord us those same privileges of engaging in a manner that is robust with the media, with you. If we cross the lines, then you must tell us that, here you cross the line. But there's no single incident where anyone can say that, but this statement by Hengari crossed the line. This statement is a threat to media freedom, is a threat to our rights as journalists. There's nothing like that. Because some of us, I can assure you, some of us are convinced about the importance of a democratic debate. We grew up under apartheid, so we understand fully the importance of having solid, respectful, democratic debate in an independent country. Because you sustain your democracy through healthy conversations and healthy debates.
So, Dr.
And on both sides. On both sides.
Yes, I'm glad you're saying on both sides. So, do you feel there's a healthy relationship between the media and the presidency?
I think it was in 2000 when the late Hidipoha Mutenya, I think it was on an occasion marking the World Press Freedom Day, and at the time I think he must have been information minister also. And he spoke about creative tension between the government and the press. We are one of the institutions in this country when the media forward queries to us, when journalists come to us, we respond. And you know that. We always respond. We invite media to our events. The president is very open and transparent with his activities. In fact, we had a visiting EU official, a senior person in the European Union, and he was sitting with the president, and the press remained throughout the meeting.
When did that change?
And then afterwards, the EU guy said, but I mean, your media has this type of access to head of state, to the meetings of the head of state, remaining throughout, and not unless individuals say, no, His Excellency, can we please keep one part of this meeting private? Then the media, unfortunately, on the basis of the request from the guest, the media has to
So are you saying
generally,
are you saying that if it was up to the president, the media would stay in every meeting till the end?
I think the president is very clear about access of the media to his activities, and of course at times you guys abuse it, but nonetheless, I think what is important to emphasize is that you have that type of unlimited access to the head of state.
Yeah, access to information.
Very few countries.
Let's talk about that pending access to information law.
Yeah, it's.
You speak so highly of government's respect for the media and so, and access to information transparently.
The Minister of Information is tasked with that mandate, and I'm sure he's better qualified to share with you. But it is one of the bills that should be, and that will be tabled in the National Assembly during the presidency of President Gengel.
Yeah. Well, what do you think is the delay in this regard?
Well, I think, every bill must be refined. There are certain elements, there are cost implications, and in its current form, the cost implications are quite high. I know that, if some of the positions that are being created are going to benefit journalists, you might not have a problem. But as a government that is concerned with keeping the cost low of certain bills, there are issues that are of concern in terms of the institutions that ought to be created and the cost implications thereof. Yeah,
let's talk about the governance system that the president created when he stepped into office in 2015. I remember one of the things he said when he was asked, especially during the creations of the positions such as the one you hold. You were not there at the time. And many other positions, there's the ministries, 2 deputy ministers and so on. He said democracy is costly. That was his answer at the time. Looking at where the country is now financially, do you think that played any role?
No, but I think, it's important to, and I think again, it's also an element that our colleagues in the media tend to ignore. Oftentimes, you are acontextual. Times we frame things in a manner that lacks context or that ignores deliberately context, because I appreciate the fact that you want to advance certain opinions and not necessarily the facts. President Gengop became president of the Republic at a very difficult period. The commodity prices took a hit. So that burst of what was then referred to as a super commodity cycle had adverse implications on the fiscal position of the Namibian government. And unquestionably, a number of things that the president would have loved to achieve during term 1 could not be carried out because we engaged in a strategy of fiscal consolidation.
Yes.
Reducing expenditure significantly. It's not something that you journalists will talk about quite frequently, but the SNT of government was about 700 million per annum, and it was reduced to about over 200 million. That's under the Gengop presidency, and a number of cuts across the board, including in the presidency, because the president believed strongly in leading by example. So we had a very difficult situation, but the essential services were provided, a number of infrastructures were completed, because when you look at the HPP1, the final report, you will see some of the achievements under very difficult circumstances. We have been able to roll out food banks to all 14 regions of the country, addressing the question of hunger, poverty. About 11,000 households receive assistance from the food bank. We doubled the old age pension from a paltry 600 to 1,200. And if you have a grandmother, if you have a mother who's a pensioner, you would appreciate sufficiently the importance of some of these interventions which were engineered by President Gengo. And I can mention a number of other interventions in the vocational education training sector, where we put, the ambition was to put about 16,000 students in vocational training. We did over 30,000. And the servicing of Evans, provision of housing. Of course, there are certain targets that we didn't meet, but we would miss the targets by about 20%, 10%. So under very difficult circumstances. So I think at times, as journalists, as researchers, because journalists are effectively researchers, it's important to get into the detail of things, the detail of documents, what they are saying. And then when you question things, you are questioning them on the basis of the facts as they are presented to you, and the facts as you have discovered them, as opposed to blanket assertions. For example, I saw last week, Friday, I think the editor of the Namibian Sun, in a very blanket, if not casual manner, saying that there's nothing new in the sauna, and some very very light assertions in an editorial on a Friday. You expect more. I mean, this sauna was rich in terms of information. This sauna was rich in terms of creativity, new things that will be done in order to ensure that we get out of the COVID-19 inflicted economic challenges. They are there. So you ask yourself, if the editor of the Namibian Sun, which is one of the largest English daily in the country, can come up with such hasty conclusions, how do we educate the Namibian public about some of these serious things?
No, it's good that you give all those examples and what you did, but you still don't answer my question. The superstructure and everything, do you think it contributed to where we are? Regardless, COVID came last year, late 2019. I'm surprised you don't want to touch on that.
But I think, Matthias Aufiku, you must look at the percentage of public office bearers, political office bearers, the percentage of their expenditure in terms of the national budget.
Yes.
Then you would not ask me that question.
Why not?
Because it's negligible.
In which sense? In which sense?
That's my point. Because it's to my recollection, it's way below 1% of total expenditure. So the challenges that we face as Namibians are of a different kind, and they don't have at all to do with the size of public office bearers. Not at all.
Mr. Hengari, can I just interject?
I think, over the past few years, the government has taken a deliberate decision not to replace certain positions in the civil service. When people go on retirement, some of the positions are permanently canned. Because that's the challenge that we have. And last year, it's not something that you applauded because it's positive. Because apparently in this country, when something is positive, we ignore. We don't talk about it. Special advisors to governors. These are positions that were there. And the president, in line with that ambition of doing more with less, these positions were not renewed.
So you're saying all 14 governors, no one is an advisor right now?
Yes. When you look at the number of ministries rationalized, brought down to a certain size, and I think, these are not things that you want to talk about.
But who brought these ministries,
No, but
Dr.
I think
Hengari? Who brought
the
them?
reality is that when we are faced with a certain type of situation, President Geingob is always someone who acts on the basis of clearly defined goals, clearly defined ambitions, and when a reality imposes itself, the president will act accordingly, and always in the best interest of ordinary Namibians. I can share with you now that even when you look at, I think it was in your newspaper today where you're talking about the presidential motorcade, and some analysts are making some very outrageous claims. President Geingob has a highly reduced motorcade. The president stops the traffic lights unless it's for ceremonial functions. But in his daily routine of going to work, he stops at the traffic lights and proceed with ordinary traffic. So when you see the roads are closed and so on, it means highly ceremonial. So these are things that are there and you see them, but you don't want to say, wait a minute, this is very different. Go to other countries. Examples have been to other countries where 2 kilometers of a road closed, but not here. President Geingob does not do those things.
Yeah, but so just because it's done in other countries, it should be fine when it happens in our jurisdiction.
But I'm just, you have to compare. In order to arrive at certain conclusions, you must compare. You cannot just, talk blanketly and say, no, why is this happening? You must be able to say, but, let's compare practices in other countries, how it is done, and say, when you compare to yours, say, but are we exaggerating, or are we operating within a practice that is acceptable? And I can share with you now that President Geingob operates within a very, in a manner that is very, very modest. And even the issues that you want to bring about of advisors and so, where did you compare?
You have a very convenient way of using comparisons when it comes to governance. If the media space says we want to compare ourselves to the best of the world and be number one and not Africa, where you compare us to a Sudan or a Burkina Faso, is that a fair comparison?
Well, I think if you, of course, I mean, I would appreciate it if the Namibian media could compare itself to the best.
No, as a government who's applauding the first in Africa.
But I would also appreciate it if you, as media practitioners, as journalists, would say, but we want the quality of our journalism must be on par with the rest of the world. It's also a challenge.
Yes.
It's also a discussion, especially since in a few days' time we are going to host the 30th anniversary of the Windhoek Declaration. So there are things that we need to talk about.
So when can we compare and when can we not compare?
We need to talk about these things. Yeah? That's why I said, you must compare when you look at our motorcade of President Geingob and the motorcade of another head of state. You will arrive at certain conclusions. I just shared with you now that President Geingob stops at traffic lights. I've on a few occasions I've been behind him. I've seen him going to work. And it's a highly reduced motorcade for those type of daily routines.
So should what we do as a country always be related to what other countries do, or must we always be context specific as to the conditions? Because every country has its own conditions.
Yeah, no, but I think it's also important to compare in order to arrive at a better understanding of your own practices, because Namibia did not invent motorcades. So we are a new country, so the advantage of learning from others. The same applies to the media fraternity. We all have to continuously improve, and the president is the first to admit that it's a journey, and throughout the journey there's learning. And it's also a challenge that you as journalists must embrace, that for us to improve in the rankings, there's also a need for a certain type of quality aspirations that must be prevalent within your fraternity.
What do you think determines those rankings?
No, I'm just saying that, you know.
No, I'm just asking.
No. It's a number of criteria, but all I'm saying is, it is important for all of us, if as the presidency, as the government, we will go back to the drawing board. I'm yet to study the rankings properly, the specific rankings.
Yes.
But again, what I can guarantee you is that just like many other indicators which we study in detail, for example, when you look at the Transparency International, the Corruption Perception Index, you will know that, you know, between 2013 and 2020, Namibia, in terms of the overall score, you would notice that the country has moved the needle. It has improved. But others might improve much better than us, and they can overtake us.
Yeah.
Not because we are doing bad. And that's a very important element to appreciate when you look at these barometers and rankings. When you look at the Mo Ibrahim Index on African Government, for example, you know, the last one looked at, I think, 8 years or so. When you look at it carefully, it says that Namibia is one of the countries that has expanded during that period on the foundations for economic opportunity. It says that.
Does who you are being compared against, does it count for anything?
No, but we live in Africa.
Yes.
We're an African country. I cannot compare the Namibian media to the British media, for example.
We are aspiring to be...
Yeah, but all I'm saying, because they have longer traditions and so on, but I think it ought to be an aspiration in terms of the quality of training, the qualifications that are required to be a journalist and so on. These are things that will move all of us forward. In as much as you have expectations from people in public offices, you know, they must be qualified, they must have ABCDE. I think those criteria must also apply to you as a fraternity in order to deliver a quality public service, because you are performing a vital function. It's a public good that you're providing under very difficult circumstances, which we all appreciate. But what is important is, how do we move the needle? What are the things that we need to do collectively, and how can we, on our side, as a government, as the presidency, assist in terms of moving the needle in as far as certain aspects are concerned? We are together in this journey. So I've said at the beginning, the media, a media that reports factually is an important component of a healthy democracy. But at times, to report factually and truthfully is also something that requires training. It requires certain qualifications. So we can all hold hands, as the president says, and move together. The relationship does not have to be adversarial. We can collaborate, we can differ respectfully and honestly, but we have to work together in order to achieve certain ends. And our interest, as the interest of Namibians, is to trust what comes out in the newspapers. They have to trust that these are the facts, this is the truth, and not just some sensational stories that are not properly researched, that are not necessarily factual, but at times carry the opinions of the authors and so on. So we need to, you and I, we have to agree on those things and guard against those.
Let's just move to the last segment of our interview, HPP2. There's been criticisms even in Parliament last week regarding the contents and the perhaps going forward how some of the contents are going to be implemented.
But what are they? When you say criticism of HPP2 in Parliament, I think I would want the specifics. For
Well,
example,
I'm sure you heard the
and that's
Honorable
why-
Swartboy's contribution when he spoke.
But I think Honorable Swartboy raised a number of issues.
Yes.
One of them was, he said, well, there should have been a final report or review of HPP1. But in fact, as a matter of fact, a final report was provided to Parliament during the State of the Nation address. At the time when President Gengo was closing HPP1, during the State of the Nation address, copies of the final report of HPP1 were on the tables of the members of that honorable chamber.
Yeah.
So you see, some of these things, and also when you say, well, Honorable Swartboy raised a number of issues. What are these issues? Specifically, since you are saying, well, some are saying...
Well, must I point you to one, like agriculture?
What about agriculture?
Yeah? The issue of even the Nekatal Dam.
What about
that
it?
was touched on.
What?
As to going forward, how do we utilize that sustainably?
There's a when you look at HPP2, the question of sustainability of Nekatal Dam, which the president applauded the former governor Clinton Swartboy for having been one of the individuals who worked on that vision. Currently, there is a plan to ensure that Nekatal Dam is a sustainable investment through green schemes. All these plans are being worked out, to buy the adjacent land in order to ensure that it becomes a highly sustainable dam that contributes effectively to our agricultural productivity. So in HPP2, it's there.
Yeah, okay.
It's there.
Lastly, you are very active on social media. Like anyone else, I'm sure you see the comments being made towards the president and so on. Do you think he still enjoys the popularity he had when he came on the scene in 2014?
I think it's...
And the love from
I think, you see, the social media is not Namibia.
Okay.
And I think it's very important to appreciate that fact.
Yes.
Social media is not Namibia. Namibians, in their majority, elected President Gengo for a 5-year term.
Yes.
They said, Dr. Gengo, you are the best amongst us.
Yes.
So lead us for another 5 years. And that's an expression of the affection of Namibians towards President Gengo, and also their belief in his skills and competencies to take Namibia forward. That is very important.
Yeah.
Social media is, as we know, you have fake accounts, you have disinformation, misinformation.
Yeah.
It's not the most effective barometer of the affection, because he was just re-elected 2019.
Can I give you a barometer and then you see whether it's effective?
No, I'm just saying.
No, I'm just, yeah.
The barometer, which you and I would have to agree on, is the fact that President Gengo was re-elected by the majority of Namibians. But it's also important that when President Gengo was elected for the first time in 2014, with a very high score.
87%.
87%.
Yes.
He, over the past 5 years, during the 5 years of his term, a very difficult period for the country on the economic front, because, as I've mentioned, our economy did not grow for 5 years in order to deal with some of the challenges that President Gengo had endeavored to deal with. President Gengo became a crisis leader, leading at a time of crisis, but at the same time pushing that very transformational agenda, because remember President Gengo in 2015 on the 21st of March said the agenda is poverty eradication. The agenda is inequality. We have moved the needle on inequality, not sufficiently, under very difficult circumstances. We have moved the needle when it comes to poverty eradication. Of course, COVID-19 is eroding some of the gains, and we are not the only ones. The United States, highly industrialized countries, you have many people who are falling into poverty because of COVID-19, because the economies came to a standstill. And I think these are material factors that we all should appreciate as having an impact on the agenda, transformational as it may be, of a leader. But what we should also appreciate is that during this period, 6 years, the leadership that President Gengo has provided has been pivotal in terms of keeping our country stable, in terms of peace, because the inclusive approach, consultation, engaging, dealing with issues in a manner that is tactful, respectful. These are important qualities in a leader in as far as a long journey is concerned.
Yeah. Lastly, from my side, we spoke about this before we started the broadcast. Some people are saying, where is the Dr. Hengari who used to write think pieces? Some are saying you are now very cuddled up into the nice office there at State House and you are not providing intellectual thoughts anymore.
Yeah, I think it's always important to appreciate a number of things. I come from, I was a teacher in the 90s. I was a high school teacher for 3 years at Ishipena, and I felt I needed to do that type of service because that was my high school. And I felt that I need to go back to Ishipena and give something back. I mean, into Ishipena after I left Shifidi. And I served the current president when he was prime minister. I was his senior special assistant. And I've always been a person who's committed to public service in different forms.
Yeah.
As a teacher, and also as an academic. But I've always been I've always believed in the sanity of the center, meaning you must always try to be balanced. I've been one person who will applaud and go back to my think pieces. There are pieces where I applaud. I would applaud the government for certain things, for certain decisions. And in that capacity of what they term as a public intellectual, I would also take certain issues critically. And I would also be angry about certain things, which is quite normal in the course of carrying out the work of an engaged spectator. I would be an engaged spectator as Raymond Aron would put it. I was an engaged spectator. For a number of years I engaged critically, but at the same time, I can assure you now that I would also come to Namibia and engage with government officials, speak to them, and participate in seminars at the invitation of the Namibian government.
Yeah.
So I've never been a person of extreme, but currently I'm in a position where I have the privilege of serving the third president during a very difficult period in the life of our republic. and will endeavor to do it to the best of my ability.
Yeah.
So it's just like you. One day, someone might say, no, we want Matthias Aufiku to be the government spokesperson. Would you say, oh no, sorry, I'm a journalist. You know, these are in the course of the professional life of individuals.
Mm-hmm.
There are certain things that are likely to happen. You are likely to find yourself working for government.
So you are saying that when some of these certain things you are referring to, it means even principles should be looked at?
No, I think, I think the problem is, I don't know, many of us are very light on what constitutes a principle.
Mm-hmm.
Very light. There are principles and values
Yes.
that animate some of us. And I've shared with you my commitment to public service, and also my commitment to serve Namibia in different roles.
Mm-hmm.
Because and it's one of the reasons why I had the option to apply for French citizenship. No, I had the option because I had stayed long enough.
Yeah.
And my friends, you know, Alfredo, why don't you apply for citizenship? You qualify. But it's not something that I wanted to do, because I believed strongly that if I do that, I might end up staying here. And my passion has always been Africa.
Yeah.
You know, so I came back to Africa. I worked in South Africa for about 5 years. I went all over the continent. You know, I saw the difficulties of this continent. I saw conflicts in certain areas, and I saw the hope in a number of African countries. So when this opportunity availed itself to be of service to Namibia here at home, because I've been away also for about 15 years or so. I was in Paris, South Africa, for a cumulative period of about 15 years. So to return to Namibia to serve in a role, it's a privilege. You know, you don't get to serve in this type of roles for,
Yeah.
for, you know what I mean, for 30 years. So it's a privilege. Yeah. It's a punctual, you know, role. It's so. But I think my commitment and my understanding of the values and the vision of President Gengo is what makes working in this type of environment very easy, because the commitment is a better Namibia. It's an inclusive Namibia. It's a Namibia that is prosperous. So those things, anyone, these are things that many of us should appreciate.
Yeah. And
that's why I feel privileged to serve in this role. I know that there will be gratuitous criticism here and there, but you know, the focus is on doing what is right for Namibia.
Okay. Dr. Hengari, thank you very much for coming through.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure.